Some SMGs are in a weird spot. They're not bad enough to ignore, but they're also not strong enough to carry you on their own. And that's the problem. Because once you actually build around them, these bad boys jump an entire tier up and start doing things that you wouldn't have expected at all. Now what's good everyone, it's Roil here and this is Built Not Broken, SMG edition. Just like in the shotgun video, I'm gonna be testing 3 A-tier-ish SMGs that most people either underrate or completely use wrong. On their own, they feel fine, but built correctly, they feel way better than their rank would suggest. But look, I'm not here to sell you some magical S-tier weapons that you've never heard before. I'm here to show you why these work, what they actually need, and who they are actually worth using for. If you like system level breakdowns, weapons that reward understanding instead of luck, and builds that actually explain why something works, consider subscribing, that's what this series is all about. Alright, let's start with the first one because this is a perfect example of a weapon that looks questionable on paper, but completely changes once you understand how it's meant to be played. So first up, the Arching Roil from the Vault card, the new edition. On paper, this thing looks awful. It overheats, and when it overheats, it stops firing, and switching fire modes reduces the heat only. Look, that is basically the opposite of how you want a looter shooter weapon to behave. But here's how it actually works. You build heat normally, and when the bar fills up, the gun bricks itself for the duration of your reload time. And after that, it doesn't reset, it drops back roughly to about 80% heat and then continue from there back upwards. Which means this is not a hold left click and pray and spray weapon. If you play it like that, you're gonna have a bad time. You have to actively use the switch mode button. Each switch drops the heat by about a third, which keeps the weapon firing and lets you stay in control instead of constantly overheating. But now, for the loadout. This gun shines the most as a kinetic with Jacob's variant, so I'm pairing it with a kinetic bleed Vex. This amplifies the gun damage, and more importantly, gives you access to Witchy Trigger Finger, which fully cleanses your health bar while boosting damage at the same time. Because of that, I'm also going to be running Teen Witch as the class mod because lifesteal applying to Overshield is absurdly strong for survivability, and it also synergizes perfectly well with how often you're resetting the heat. If you need the full build, I have it linked up in the tippy top, you can use that one. Firmware wise though, this is where the second half of the double whammy comes in. Daddy Dio fits this gun perfectly. The switch mode bonuses finally matter, and reducing the heat only takes about a second, which means you can actually take full advantage of this firmware instead of just fighting it and having to switch in between two different modes. It's normally a nightmare. Here, it's beautiful. There are two weak points of this weapon right out of the gate, and one is fire rate and the other one is splash radius. The splash radius is tiny, and while you want it to do more fire rate, there is a tipping point. Push it too far, and you're forced to reduce heat every single second, which just kills your flow. Because of that, I'm not using Warpaint for more fire rate. Instead, I'm running an AF1000 with lifesteal. One buff at the start of the fight, no extra self-stabs like animations, and I can focus entirely on managing heat. Now, I also tested Super Soldier for more fire rate, but to be fair, What's for Dinner consistently came out on the top. The synergy between Teen Witch, Overshield, Lifesteal, What's for Dinner is just too strong to give up, it's just too good. For enhancements, I've tested everything. And I landed on the Jacob's Scattershot with Leaper and Sequencer. Sequencer is gonna give you a stacking bonus damage on crits, and Leaper helps with the AoE clear with this gun because the projectiles were very tiny, so it's not that easy to hit critical hits all the time on weak points. It honestly shoots more like a nail gun than an SMG. I also tried the Children of the World Glacier for reduced heat bonuses under 50% and all that kind of nonsense so that you don't consume heat when you shoot. It's not bad, and if you're really good at managing heat, it can outperform the Jacobs one on a single target. But I mess it up occasionally, so Jacobs is more consistent for me. It's gonna happen that you break the gun every now and again. I even tried using Reaper, thinking that High Roller would be a permanent 50% damage on buff. Nope. You lose the buff the moment you reduce heat. I'm pretty sure this is broken. But since the heat reduction doesn't even count as a reload, this is basically a Reaper gun that cannot benefit from the Reaper enhancements at all. Very cool. Now, all that it says, this is a classic case of don't judge a book by its cover. It's not Dark Beast, but it is far from that weight. And if you're looking for a more active, more involved SMG playstyle, look, this one is absolutely worth trying. And next up, I've got Onslaught build for you guys. This weapon is almost, I never see it being talked about, even though on paper it actually sounds pretty solid. In practice, it tends to under-deliver if you don't build around it properly. The legendary effect is where this thing looks like it should punch way above its weight class. Keep it coming is the effect, and it gives you 30% chance per bullet fire to deal extra damage and consume no ammo. So today's mission, should you consider to accept it, it is to crank the dial to 11 and see what happens. So I'm gonna pair this in directly with Rafa, or rather, a Rafa build that does indirect damage, and mainly for two reasons. First, Rafa has an excellent ammo sustain and reload benefits through talents and overdrive. Second, since we know that we are going to be reloading a lot, we want to avoid completely tanking our DPS while doing so, and the cannons help with that with the downtime. Now the real challenge, or the real change to this build, is picking up Rinse instead of Las Jarras. Other than that, this is just a pretty standard Dancer Peacebreaker setup, nothing revolutionary here. Where things get a little more specific is the gearing. For the firmware, we're going to be running heating up. And here's a very important clarification. Onslaught is a Loadout weapon, but it will always spawn with COV as a licensed port. That means there is no escaping overheating. Unlike the Roil, this weapon will eventually break because the heat dissipation is genuinely awful. So instead of fighting it, we embrace it, we give it a warm hug. So heating up gives us faster reload, increased number of shots that we can fire by overheating, and then buffs our damage during that overheat. It's basically tailor-made for this gun if I'm honest with you. Alongside to that, I'm splitting reload speed with 1 point in trickshot and 1 point in Oscar Mag for a total of 15% faster reloads. For the rep kit, here I'm going full tilt, I'm going Warpaint. Here I don't mind the bursty damage followed by the constant reloading. It honestly reminds me a little bit like playing Tracer back in the day in Overwatch 1, just running around one clipping things. Same philosophy for the shield. I'm fully committing and running Super Soldier for even more fire rate. Ammo regen might help a little, but realistically you won't notice it much because you're shooting so fast that 1 or 2 bullets ain't gonna make a difference. For the enhancement, Blood of Hero of Bullets fits this setup perfectly. More fire rate, more bullets, exactly what I want from this build. The main downside here is the low card damage. Because of that, you really want to farm the correct element from Idolator's Soul. If you don't manage, the negative damage penalty will hurt you a lot. But if you match the weapon element to the enemy weakness, this thing absolutely shreds and ends up being a surprisingly fun. Look, I know you have it in the bank. Take it out for a spin, try it for me, and let me know how it works in the comments. And lastly, I'm dusting off one of my favorite guns from the campaign, the Plasma Coil. Yes, I got this super early as a world drop without even realizing that it is a dedicated drop from the Timekeeper. Hashtag sometimes lucky. Now this isn't a weak gun at all. We all know this is incredibly satisfying to use, and it only has 2 real issues. First is fast flying enemies, those quickened crashes. They're a pain to track because you are shooting projectiles, good luck. And that it's locked into shock and radiation. The first one you can't do anything about, it is what it is. The second one, we can absolutely work to fix it. Enter Harlow, and more specifically, Chroma Accelerator Harlow. That radiating ball of terror is the perfect pairing for Plasma Coil and solves the elemental limitations entirely. The build itself doesn't need anything special. For gearing, this is where we're going to push this into S-tier territory. Now for the firmware, we're going to be taking full advantage of the new Skillcraft interaction because it is a synergy made in heaven with the Chroma Accelerator. When you're using the Chroma Ball, every single one of the radiation dots that you shoot out is going to give us a stack of Skillcraft, which means much larger explosion, much more damage into neutron capture with the augments. Now the second firmware slot is flexible, but I would recommend sticking to the OG GO GFC just to keep things clean and consistent. For the rep kit, Honestly, you're going to want to go with triple bypass with amp because your first shot is going to be massive and it's just going to boost your damage overall. Now, an epic order version with amp and splash damage would probably be the hardest hitting options here. Order and triple bypass is close mandatory because now with caffeine, it is basically the only reliable way to cycle your action skill cooldown fast enough. For the shield though, since we are not using Hollow's usual overshield generators from the green tree, I'm gonna go full defensive with Pandora and Memento. Yes, Protein Cell and What's for Dinner will give you more damage, but being too squishy with this setup just gets annoying very fast because you can't use your bomb and then you end up being stuck, and then I don't like it at all. So for this one, I'd rather sacrifice a bit of damage and then have a little bit of more fun with a longer clear time. I'm good with that. Now for the enhancement. Since this thing is pure melee, I'm gonna run Fashionista. We talked about this in my last video, right? The 25% damage from Synthetizer is just strong. It's good damage. And the Transfuser works especially well here because most of your high damage status effects are coming directly from your guns. Out of all the three setups, this one is easily the most nuclear. So if you haven't given Plasma Coil a proper shot yet, look, definitely do. This one will not disappoint, has the Vertex seal of approval, bam! But this is it. 3 SMGs that absolutely deserve more respect once you build around them. Now look, if you got some value out of this, make sure you're subscribed. More Built Not Broken coming very soon, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.